Missouri voters have only 1 week left to register to vote in November's presidential election. As for who's eligible, the state constitution does not prohibit non-citizens from voting, but federal voter laws do. According to Missouri's Secretary of State, voters must be a U.S. citizen and Missouri resident to cast their ballots. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft says he's concerned that non-citizens may still be able to vote.
It is. It is because of the federal government. And also because our state legislature requires us to allow the federal registration form. But the federal registration form does not require proof of citizenship.
There are no loopholes. You have to be a registered voter. You have to be a citizen to be a registered voter.
Missourians will vote on adding a state constitutional provision that bans non-citizens from voting this November.